This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh is back from vacation, which means Josh and I can get back to talking about sports and all the craziness from this week. We start with March Madness, and well, I think the name itself can tell you what happened. There was a lot of madness. A lot of our teams, our brackets have basically crumbled. My wife somehow is still leading the world in her bracket. And then we move into baseball, where we talk about all the moves that have been happening, how the Reds have basically decided to tank, how Freddie Freeman has switched from Atlanta to LA. And then we finish up with the NFL, where we talk about all the news that's been happening, from Baker Mayfield wanting out of Cleveland to now Deshaun Watson in Cleveland to Khalil Mack going to LA to all the different moves that have been happening. We will cover all of it and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast with Ben and Josh. We are back. Josh is back from vacation. He has decided to join us, in the flesh. So Josh, let's just start. Like, how's your vacation? Was it relaxing?
It was. I went to the Philly area, kind of had like this gym world tour lined up where I just kind of made my way out through the East Coast, trained in Pittsburgh, trained in some gyms in Philly, in New Jersey, New York. And then got to visit a few friends along the way. I think I ended up catching up with 5 friends. So while I did make the road trip on my own, I still was, I guess, in the presence of other people that I know. So yeah, it was good to I guess get a week off. But man, dude, keeping up with all the sports that were going on, it's like I picked the worst week to take off for the podcast.
I know. And poor Aaron had to be stuck with figuring out how we're going to do 64 teams and, but thanks to Aaron, by the way, I should say that before we get too far. I mean, he stepped in and did that right before he went to the first 4. So
yeah, good stuff.
The man was crazy.
Yeah, between all the NFL moves and all the MLB moves and March Madness and stuff like that, it was just, it was tough for me to keep up. And there might be some stuff that happened that I just missed because
that is true.
Obviously I can't be on my phone all the time or else I would be putting a dent in my vacation, but I had fun.
And you have a big announcement too, though. You have a big announcement.
Over vacation, I announced that I am entering into the bodybuilding competition sphere with my first show in men's physique that's coming up in June. And going to all these gyms and stuff like that, a lot of them are famous on Instagram. So it's kind of was motivating to get in environments like that around other like-minded people that are, I guess, making it in the industry. And as of Saturday, I'm 11 weeks out. So down 7 pounds so far. I'm not really sure what to expect. I'm definitely not going into the show to lose, but I'm also going in, I guess, not expecting to win either. Just having fun, getting the experience, and seeing what happens. I got the full announcement on my YouTube channel. If you guys just search out Josh Burris, you can find that. And pretty soon I'll have a vlog from my trip out to the East Coast. You guys can see a little bit of what my vacation looked like.
Dude, that's awesome. We'll have to do like a preview before you go do it. And then we'll have to do a recap, and you have to tell us like the pros and cons from it. We'll have to go through it. That's in June. So, it's a little bit of ways, but it's going to be coming fast. So And Josh, there's been a lot happening. Like you said, it's March Madness. So, why don't you talk about some March Madness, some things that I think some of us expected. Most of our brackets are in the trash. Mine is. So go ahead and lead us on that one.
Yes. So my final 4 were Kansas, Duke, UCLA, and Tennessee. And so far, 3 of those 4 are still dancing.
Better than me.
So I guess most of that's mostly. I expect all those 4 to still be dancing. Obviously, Tennessee being out was kind of a surprise with the momentum that they had coming in, but everybody else is still good. I am surprised that my Tar Heels are still alive. That Baylor game was, we'll talk about St. Peter's beating Kentucky. That's obviously the largest upset, but the craziest game to me was North Carolina building that 25-point lead, having to deal with Brady Manick getting ejected, Caleb Love fouling out, and Baylor making a comeback while all those guys are out for Carolina, forcing overtime, but Carolina holding on thanks to Armando Bacot's rebounding and RJ Davis's scoring. And North Carolina's in the Sweet 16, so they're a game farther than what I thought they would be. So props to my Tar Heels. We'll see if they can knock off one of my other Final Four teams, UCLA. I'll gladly be wrong about that pick, but that's a little bit of the things that I've been shocked by, but also things that I expected to happen. Another thing that we didn't expect to see, Ben, is Michigan still
Don't even
dancing,
get me
but
started.
also Ohio State to actually win a game this tournament.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Okay, there's two things I'll talk about that. See, the thing about Ohio State, like I had them in my bracket, winning the first game. I thought maybe they'll squeak by. Most people didn't. I thought, maybe they'll squeak by. They'll have enough, which they did. They played really good defense, probably some of the best defense I've seen them play in a really long time. And then most people were like, oh, they're going to get blown out by Villanova. I was one of those that was like, I didn't see them even getting past Villanova. In my gut was like, maybe they won't even win the first round. They go to Villanova. They're down 15 at one point, and I literally weren't about to turn off the TV. I was sitting with my wife. We were watching it. I was like, I'm just going to turn it off. And then they start chipping away, and I'm like, what's going on?
You realize it's March. You're never truly out.
Exactly. But the thing is, the crazy part is that like it was literally Liddell and Branham. Like those were the only two dudes scoring. Like no one else was scoring. Zed Key did a really good job of like getting a bunch of rebounds, causing havoc. But I tell people this: Ohio State put up a fight, and yeah, they didn't win. Aaron and I talked about this last week. This is going to be interesting to see what they do with Holtman this year. He has never went past the second round in 5 years. He's always won 20 games, but he's lost like more than 10, like 3 of the 5 years. So that's very interesting for me as a Buckeye fan, because we have the women's team who wasn't even supposed to make it to the Sweet 16. They're in the Sweet 16. So it's very interesting to me, and that whole concept. But then, yes, Michigan. Josh, we both have opinions on this. Personally,
lost Michigan. How did they even get the tournament to begin with? They didn't even win their conference championship, their regular season title. They didn't make a decent run in the Big Ten at all. And then somehow they end up with an 11th seed, which is kind of high.
That's generous.
And now they're moving on to the Sweet 16.
Well,
that was the team that I expected the least to be at
the craziest thing, right? Like I'm looking at them right now. They're playing Villanova. They're going to get beat by Villanova. I'm sorry. It would have been sweet if we had a Ohio State Michigan. To be honest, I was rooting for Ohio State just for that fact. Ohio State versus Michigan. But I tell people this, right? Like I look at this Michigan. They were 19-14 in the regular season. Yes, they had a lot of injuries or whatever. But I'm sorry, if you're going to put them in the tournament, at least put them in the first 4. You did that to Rutgers. You did that to Indiana. You should have done the same thing to Michigan. This is not me because I'm a Ohio State fan. This is me as a general basketball fan. Stop putting these teams that just because they're big names, just because they've been there, if they don't make it, they don't deserve to be there. Put them in the NIT. The NIT used to be glorious. It used to be something that everyone wanted to get into. What I'm saying is, and this is what I'm saying is, and then at the end of the game with the whole Juwan Howard thing, like, you can get me started on that. But
Ben, Juwan Howard's actually a good guy. Okay, I know.
He just decked a guy.
To demonize him because he threw some weak punch at another coach, but you saw how he consoled that other young man from his opponent's team, and it just it's all good now. Juwan is actually a good guy.
Yeah, and that in my neck of the woods, that would have been called you're still a pansy for doing what you did. So, but no, I mean, I look at if we look at the matchups, right? I'm looking at the Sweet 16 right now. We have Gonzaga, Arkansas, Texas Tech, Duke. That is the only region that's normal. That's literally the only region that's normal.
Is that 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have in the East, we have North Carolina versus UCLA, 8-4. Then we have Purdue and St. Peter's. This is where Purdue, if they win this game, could make a run all the way to the Final Four. But as I say, don't count out the Peahawks.
You can't, man.
The Peacocks. Sorry, not the Peahawks. That's weird. But the Peacocks. There we go. But yeah, they are. I was seeing all these TikToks of like these announcers going, yes, and the Peacocks have come down to the. I'm like, it just sounds weird, but it's St. Peter's. They didn't have a guy that was ranked above a 2-star coming out of high school, and those are the stories, Josh, that me and you grew up on. We think of the George Masons. We think of the FGCUs. We think of those kind of teams that made us love March Madness. Those are the kind of teams we root for. And it's really cool. And then I'll continue before we go back to that. In the South region, we have Arizona, Houston. We have Michigan, Villanova. And then we have Kansas, Providence. And then a weird 11-10 matchup, Iowa State and Miami.
Iowa State's been a good story, too. I think they win 2 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved on to the Sweet 16 this year.
So it's going to be interesting. What is, out of these Sweet 16 games, what is like the team or the story that you're really saying, like, I want to get behind? I know North Carolina. So if you take North Carolina out of it for a second, you take that kind of region out. out of the rest of them, what is that story you're kind of looking behind? Like, man, I want to follow this. I hope this goes well.
Yeah, I think most of the country is going to be rooting for St. Peter's against Purdue. So Purdue's kind of in an us against the world kind of situation. But Purdue's also a team that I felt had what it takes to win a national tournament. Yeah. It's just they're that team that's capable of beating everybody, but also that team that's capable of losing everybody. They just lack the overall consistency. But they got great point guard play in Jaden Ivey. So, I mean, you would think that a team like Purdue could take care of business against this 15 seed St. Peter's, but obviously nobody else at St. Peter's has been able to do that yet. So if this is like if Purdue can make it to the Elite Eight, maybe that's the final momentum shift that they need to, I guess, propel themselves to a full series championship run. The other matchup I guess I'm looking forward to, just being a Tar Heels fan, is UCLA North Carolina, because
that's a classic.
Carolina's kind of that team that I also feel like can beat most teams, but they also just lack the overall depth, as we saw in the Baylor game when they had two starters out with Manick and
up 25 points
and Love. Yeah, they can't even handle a 25-point lead. And I guess realistically speaking, it's like we got past the 1 seed, so that means it only gets easier from here, right? Well, I think UCLA is kind of low at a 4 seed. I think they probably should have been higher. They really just had like this midseason hiccup where they couldn't seem to catch a break. But I really respect UCLA. Obviously, got them in the Final Four. If Carolina can get past them, maybe this team can make a run too. So those are probably the two that I am looking forward to the most. The two stories, two scenarios.
Yeah, I would say one of the stories I'm looking forward to is this Miami team. Coach Larinaga, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's just a veteran coach that I love listening to him. Like, he was joking about Charles Barkley, but then he was being serious and he was being heartwarming. He's a guy that just, like, it's something about this Miami team. I said this to Aaron last week. Like, they weren't really giving them much of a shot against USC. Everyone was going for the Pac-12, but this Miami team, if they win this game, they have a great shot of making a chance to go pretty deep as a 10 seed. So that's one of the stories. I think Iowa State in the same way. Like, I like both those stories. So either team, I would be more than well. And then my other ones, this is the weird one. I think you'll touch on this too, is the Duke scenario, right? Like, Ohio State beat Duke. And I again believe if Ohio State would have stayed healthy and they wouldn't have had the COVID stretch. I don't know if you remember this. They missed like a month and a half of the season because they had games canceled or postponed. Ohio State did. So that threw off their whole season, but that's besides the point. But they beat Duke, and I saw Duke play like not in person, but like on TV playing Ohio State. And I was like, okay, is this Duke team good? And it's Coach K. And obviously I think when they lost in the tournament, the ACC tournament, you saw a different Coach K. This was an emotional game, right? Like, not the AC tournament, when they lost the final game against North Carolina. That's what I'm thinking of. And he got really emotional, right? And he's like, be quiet, right? Like Coach K, the classic Coach K. But I think that was the shift for him, was like, yeah, if I'm going out, I want to go out with a bang. And there's just something to me about Coach K, his final season. You talked about it before we went on air. Is this written? Is this scripted to where you see a UNC Duke Final Four game to determine who goes to the national title? That would just be crazy, but it would not be far-fetched in my eyes.
I mean, how many kind of storybooks, I guess, finishes have we seen the NCAA tournament? We've seen North Carolina lose to Villanova on a game-winning 3 in the championship, come back the next year and win it all. Like, that tournament, I told everybody, there's no way Carolina doesn't win this, and it happened. Virginia, similarly, loses to a 16 seed UMBC team, first one in history to fall to a 16, comes back the next year, wins it all, gets their redemption. So wouldn't it make sense for Coach K losing his last home game, which was super hyped up? Everybody was betting on a Duke W over rival North Carolina. Carolina kind of shocks the world and beats them. So it only makes sense that Coach K, the GOAT, goes out on top, winning his last tournament. And then that'll definitely prove if the tournament is scripted. If anybody is kind of on the fence about it being fixed, maybe that'll be the final event that needs to happen for that. But for that reason, I picked Duke to win it all. For similarly how I picked North Carolina to win it all that one year and confidently believed it. I don't as confidently believe that could be Duke this year, just because this does seem like a season where really anybody could win, but it just makes sense a Duke W to me. But as a Carolina fan, I'll gladly be wrong about it, Ben.
And this is my question to you. I want to follow you up with that. You just kind of mentioned it. This is, I think, one of the only years that I can remember in my lifetime where I look at the whole 64 teams going into the tournament and go, you know what? Any one of these teams could win it all. I don't know about you, but that's how I thought from the moment I was filling out my bracket. Like, I could go with Gonzaga and they might not win it all. I could go with a 5 seed. They might win it all. What is your thoughts on that? Do you think this is one of those years where it's like, there's really no one that's saying like, this is our season?
I mean, who are all the 1 seeds? Baylor was a 1 seed. Gonzaga was a 1 seed. Kansas was a 1 seed. And who was that third one? Arizona. Yeah. Arizona's never really done that well in the tournament. I know the teams change every year. You get new kids in, but they just never seem to do good. No matter how much they dominate in the regular season. So I wasn't really high on them. Not really high on Gonzaga. We've seen Gonzaga make the national championship a couple times, but not really be able to put it together. And this year's team, I don't think was as good as last year's team. So it only made sense to me that they weren't going to really make it that far. Maybe the Elite Eight was their ceiling. Baylor, they looked good at times, but then they looked not the greatest at times either. So it was just kind of like, I don't really feel good about any of these 1 seeds. And I know I have Kansas in, but didn't really feel confident about that one either. But it really does feel like anybody could win this tournament this year. And I mean, that can really make it tough to pick a bracket because you kind of psych yourself out of a lot of things. So I took the opposite approach and probably filled this bracket out quicker than all the other ones. I just went with gut feeling each pick, probably finished it in under 5 minutes.
I should have went gut feeling. My wife, you know, she's leading our family bracket. That girl went through and picked like all the top seeds, right? And then she had Colgate going to the Final Four, which honestly would have been shocked if that would have happened.
This was probably the quickest bracket I picked, Ben, but it also, caveat, was one of the worst brackets I've ever picked. So maybe it does require a little bit of thought and intelligent thinking. But
my wife, by the way, just yelled that she's better. So that's what, if anybody could hear that in the audio, that's what my wife yelled from in the room. So, she's calling me. So hold on just a second. Hello. Okay. What were you saying?
Let's get that on speaker. Put on the mic.
Wait, hold on. Continue.
But even though I chose Colgate, I'm still better.
Okay. So since you chose Colgate, you were better. Still better.
Then, like, even though I knew that was gonna be the bad choice, it was just fun to choose that one. And I am purposely screwed it up, like, from the beginning. I was still better.
Oh, okay. I love you, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you. That makes me feel so amazing about myself.
I have 34 and you have 32.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Love you.
Maybe next year after I teach you how to do the brackets.
Okay. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
You can teach me about the teams, but I will teach you how to fill out a bracket.
Okay.
The European education, they teach you how to do tests.
Okay. I love you, baby. Bye.
I will teach you how to fill out the brackets.
All right. Well, that was a humbling moment here on the Baseline Podcast. That was a new special guest out of nowhere. Yeah. So, Josh, what would you say here as we finish up this tourney talk? If you look at the games now that are left, what is the one team that maybe we haven't? I should say is, what is the Final Four? Out of the teams that are left, no matter what your original Final Four were, out of the teams left, who would be the Final Four you're going to have coming out of this, out of these teams?
Well, I guess my original Final Four, I'm feeling good about the 3 that are still alive. Like, I still feel like UCLA is going to be the team to come out. Kansas, blanking. Who'd I have? Duke. I feel good about all those. Just the region with Tennessee. Remind me who's all in that region again.
That's we have where Tennessee we have Michigan, Villanova, Arizona, Houston.
I feel like the way that Nova played Ohio State, that could be the team. They also, I heard this that they are the best free throw shooting team in the country.
They
And
literally
when you
miss
get
barely
in
any.
situations where it's the last minute and other teams are fouling you, in hopes that you miss your 1-and-1 or your double bonus that they can maybe go down, get 3 and catch up. That's important. So I'm going to go ahead and if I get a redo here at my Final Four, I'm going to go with my initial 3 that I had that are still alive, and we'll throw Nova in there.
That's great because you had 3 that are still left in the Final Four. I had 1. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga to keep my spirit alive a little bit. I'm going to shock people a little bit. I'm going to go Houston out of the South region. So out of that Arizona, Houston, Michigan, Villanova. I just something about Houston. I watched them play. They're a pretty solid team. Again, I'm not sold on Arizona, so I think Houston gets to the Final Four. I'm out of that UNC area, the East. I'm going to go Purdue still. I still think Purdue is going to make it out of there. And then the last one, I actually going to have Kansas out of that one. So Kansas, Gonzaga, Houston, Purdue. So that's who I have there. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a crazy one, but at the same time, it's March Madness. It's supposed to be like this. If it wasn't like this, we would hate it. So with that, we're going to go from the arena to the baseball diamond, or kind of the off-season baseball diamond. It's not really the baseball diamond yet because we're out of the lockout, which is awesome. And Josh, let's talk about some of the not crazy thing, but just some of the interesting signings / big signings / moves that's going on in baseball. And also talk about the universal DH that's happening as well this year. So go ahead and lead us off with that. Lead off. Get that?
Well, I think the headline move was Freddie Freeman joining the Dodgers.
Yep. This is a big one.
Yeah.
They keep getting more stacked. I swear this team is going to be got bench guys that are better than the whole Reds team, because we'll get to
this team. I know they lost Corey Seager, but this team has Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, Freddie Freeman, literally the whole lineup, I'm pretty sure has all been an all-star at some point. And when you're the Dodgers, you can afford that. I thought Freddie was Atlanta till I die, kind of
That's what I thought too.
But I don't know if it was just Atlanta didn't want to shell out the money. But I think once they made that trade for Matt Olson, which good on them, Olson is a little younger, they were able to get him cheaper. I don't think he's the caliber of player that Freddie is, being a former MVP, but Atlanta isn't falling off, I think, too much by doing this. For the franchise itself, maybe it was a better move, but I think the fans would have preferred to keep Freddie in town. But I think that's the headline move. What did you think of that one? Are you surprised to see Freddie wearing a Dodger jersey? Or
it's more annoying. It's more annoying. Because we both root for small market teams. So it's just annoying to see these big clubs I've always said MLB needs a cap of some sort. I've always said that. Whether that will ever happen, I don't think so. But I just think it's so easy sometimes. And baseball is a weird game, though, too, where you don't have to be a huge market team to be successful. So, again, that might never happen. But I think when you start seeing these teams, it almost feels like the NBA again, where you're just getting these huge market teams that are just kind of swapping in all this money. I will say about the Braves. According to Freddie Freeman, the Braves weren't really aggressive at re-signing him. That was their mistake. If they wanted him, I don't know if they did or not.
I will kind of comment on that. They were very quick to extend Ozzy Albies and Ronald Acuna very early on in their careers before they even could hit arbitration. They made sure to get those guys under 8-year contracts, so they were with the team until they were 30 years old. So I was a little surprised that they didn't make this more of a priority.
Yeah, and he said right after the lockout, the Dodgers were the first ones called, not the Braves, which I thought was very interesting to me.
That is,
which shows that there is maybe was some hesitancy, he's getting up there in age. But if you have Freddie Freeman, I love Joey Votto. Don't get me wrong. Joey Votto is one of my favorite players of all time to watch. I would kill to have a guy like that, Freddie Freeman, sitting there, and you could just re-sign him for, a few years or whatever. But yeah, it's an interesting one. So again, I'm more annoyed that he went to the Dodgers. I don't care if he would have went to anywhere else. It's more why the Dodgers? Could he go to the AL? Just get out of the NL for a while. But speaking of the AL, another big move, 2 big moves I actually want to talk about is Carlos Correa signing a 3-year, $105 million. Why can't I have that much money, Josh? There are days.
You picked the wrong career, Ben. You should have been a baseball player.
I know. I should have. 3-year, but this is interesting. It's similar to the Castellanos deal with the Reds. He has an opt-out after the first 2 seasons. So if he doesn't like what's going on in Minnesota, he can opt out and renegotiate or go somewhere else. So he has a 3-year contract, which I'll get your take on that in a second. And then the other big one, which was a shocker to me because I didn't see this coming, Trevor Story signing a 6-year deal, $140 million to the Red Sox. To me, I don't know how I feel about that one. That seems a little aggressive and a little too much money for him. That's my take.
We know that Story has some power, but he's also been hitting in Colorado, right? Where like everybody's numbers are a little bit inflated by the environment. But I gotta imagine he wouldn't fall off too much. But also, isn't Xander Bogaerts still a Boston Red Sox and playing shortstop?
I wouldn't be shocked. They've talked about Xander Bogaerts played some second and third. I wouldn't be shocked if they move them around a little bit. They have Devers though, so. I don't know. Story could be that DH guy. I mean, he's got power, but he's got a good glove too. So I'm interested to see what they do. I didn't really understand the amount of money they gave him. What do you thought of the Carlos Correa? Now they have, by the way, in that same draft that he was drafted, they have the 1 and 2 picks. They have Buxton and now they have Correa. This, I feel like it honestly is a weird one. I don't feel like it's maybe put the Twins on top over anybody, but I feel like it's a good addition to a really solid offense.
Yeah, being in.
He's away from Houston Astros.
I have to catch myself here. I almost said Indians fan, Guardians fan now.
Politically correct.
Definitely makes the division, I guess, a little bit more competitive for most of the teams. I personally think that the White Sox, this is their division this year. Mm-hmm. I think the Tigers made some steps forward, getting a guy like Baez, but they also kind of seemed on the up last year. Cleveland's kind of on a decline. They're giving up some players, and it looks like we're about to go into a full rebuild soon. So
hey, join us down south, right?
Cincinnati basically
don't start. Just stop. We'll get to there in a second. I don't even want to talk about it.
We'll get there.
Fired up.
I couldn't let that slide though. But yes, Cleveland seems to be on the trend down. The Royals seem to be more on the trend down. White Sox trending up. Tigers trending up. I don't know if adding Correa necessarily makes the Twins or puts them in play for that division. We'll have to see once some games going up, but it definitely pushes, I guess, Cleveland, Kansas City a little further down in that division.
It's an interesting one. I do agree with you. I think the Indians are in. Guardians. I'm never going to stop saying that.
We're never going to stop saying.
I'm sorry, people. Don't ban us. So. Another one I want to talk about that is, as a Reds fan, is hurting is Nick Castellanos. Mm-hmm. He obviously went to 5-year, $100 million deal. But this is what annoys me about this contract, right? Is that he doesn't have a single opt-out. And it just bothers me so much that he had 2 opt-outs with the Reds and then has no opt-outs for 5 years. And again, I'm tired of all these guys going to the NL. Can they just go to the AL for once? I just want the Reds to have a shot. We'll get to the Reds in a second. But I forgot to mention when we talked about Freddie Freeman, they almost did a trade. So they got rid of Freddie Freeman. They added Kenley Jansen. So, they added but he's getting older. I think 16 million is a little steep for a guy that, he's been consistent, but do you want to spend that much for 1 year? If it was multiple years, I understand, but it's an interesting one. But yeah, let's talk about the Reds for a second. We could go on and on about these deals. There's tons of deals.
Let's take a count though. Can we figure all this out? They traded Gray. They traded Suarez. They traded. Is there any more that I'm forgetting?
Yes. Winker went in that Suarez trade. Gosh. Oh, also, before we talk about the Reds, I want to just real quick. We also forgot about Chris Bryant going to Colorado for a 7-year deal. $182 million. That is the
one that's kind of weird because Colorado doesn't seem to be in play for any winning. So this move just seems all about the money. This is the Dodgers, Giants, Padres division, I think, for at least the next 3 years.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's like a new Nolan Arenado.
Chris Bryant hit 60 bombs, though.
Yeah, he's the new Nolan Arenado. That's what he's going to be. He's going to be the guy that hits a ton of home runs and leads them to whatever. Schwarber went to the Phillies, so that's going to be an interesting one.
Philly made a couple low-key moves kind of like that.
Yeah, but then if you look at the Cubs, they did sign the Japanese star Seihei Suzuki to a 5-year, $85 million contract. And he seems like a pretty good. I looked at his stats. He's a pretty dominant hitter. The issue with Japanese stars, as the Reds have found out, with Shohei Akami, is half the time they're either really good or they just are so bad.
It's very tough to hit on one. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you got to invest a lot with just buying out their contract in Japan and bringing them over here. Like, it's a huge investment for something that may not work out.
I mean, I guess a cool story too with, you mentioned the Royals. A cool story with them is Zach Greinke is returning to Kansas City.
Back.
So that's a really cool story. I think this could mean his final year. I think this might be the end of Zach Greinke a little bit. I think
that could be a little bit of the reason why he came back.
But then also with the Royals, they got Amir Garrett, one of my guys, which hurts from the Reds.
I forgot about.
Yeah, which is one of my dudes that I loved watching. But yeah, going back to on the Reds, they got rid of Jesse Winker, Eugenio Suarez. They got rid of earlier in the offseason. They got rid of I'm trying to think here. They got rid of Wade Miley earlier in the year, early in the offseason. Sonny Gray, the catcher who I now blank on, Barnhart. They got rid of him. And I'll be honest, you want my opinion on this, Josh? Because I know it's a tough subject for me.
Was it time for a full-out rebuild for the Reds?
No.
It seemed like they were on the right track there for a minute.
I'll be 100% with you. I'll be 100% with you. They were a couple players away. If they could re-sign Castellanos, even if they didn't, they were a couple players away from going to the playoffs. I'm not kidding you when I say that. Like,
I agree.
I watched this team last year. This team was competitive. In the COVID year, they made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And now, why are we doing the Pirates thing? We're literally becoming the Pirates, where we win a bunch of games in a row. We did this back after, remember we had that run from 2010 to 2014. We had that long run where we made the playoffs every year. Then we did the exact same thing. We're like, oh, you know what? We don't like winning anymore. We're going to be the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to be the Cleveland Browns of weird. Baseball. And we're going to just start losing. And the thing is all of our top draft picks have either been injured or we trade them away. So I don't get the whole idea. I mean, it is exciting, I guess, to see young guys. And we still have like India. You have Green, who's going to be the number one pick from a few years ago, will be starting this year. There's a lot of young guys, but it just hurts because Suarez was one of those guys that every Cincinnati Reds fan loved to watch. Same with Winker. Winker was both of those guys were such a down-to-earth guys that the city loved. I mean, Garrett and Winker have been here since they've been drafted. Suarez has been here for a while. I mean, I get it. They need to get rid of contracts, but that's the owner's fault. And I've said this, I'm going to say this 1,000 times over. They need to get new owners. They cripple this club. They don't spend money. They're actually not that rich. They're one of the poorest owner. Like, I hate to say poorest, but they don't have the money like every other owner does. I have said this. My dad has said this for years. Like, we need to get new owners. They are just handcuffing this club. They give, Joey Votto 10 years ago, they give him a huge contract that's hand crippling the club with a contract. He's getting paid $27 million a year for a guy he's not necessarily producing the same way. So that's my rant. I'm sorry, everyone. I just need to get that off my chest. Is there any comments for you, Josh?
That too, because I feel like we kind of share similar frustrations with our teams. Cleveland's rebuilds seem to happen more so when guys' contracts are coming up and they don't want to pay. So I didn't know if this was like a similar situation in Cincinnati, because they seem to be getting close to that. And it's like, okay, now we just need a couple guys.
The crazy thing, though, is, I'll be honest, Suarez had 3 years left on his contract. It was about $10 million a year. He had 3 years left on his contract. Then you had Winker, who's in arbitration, but they were working on an extension before the lockout. Then you had Gray, who still had 2 years left on his deal. You still had Garrett, who I believe had 1 more year left on his deal. Like, that's what doesn't make sense. It's not like all these guys were like, this was their last year of the contract. Let's get what we can while we get it. Okay, then wait till trade deadline. See what you can do this year and then get rid of him. Castillo is hurt. He might not start opening day. Our starting shortstop is hurt. Like, we now are going to be playing dudes that I've never heard of. And that's what I hate as a baseball fan, is when you play with guys that
learn all the new names for sure.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough as a Reds fan. My dad grew up in the 70s with the Big Red Machine. So my dad is always comparing all these teams to the 70s. And it's really hard for him to get behind a team that, I'll be honest, it's really annoying when you tell your manager you're going to back him and then you do all this. And that's the hard part for me, is how are you going to back a manager when you're going to just overturn everything and be like, oh, we're doing this to save money. Well, do you want to win? Because the only way you can win in baseball is by spending money. We know this. We saw the Indians. When they spent money, they did well.
When you get that hit that window where all your prospects are like on their rookie contracts and playing well, like that's your window too. Which the Indians have been in that situation, like the 2016 World Series. Like they did go out and get, I believe, Edwin Encarnacion that season and spent a little bit of money to get him. But a large majority of the guys on the team at that point were either on like, I guess, average mid-range contracts, like average free agent signings, or they were on their rookie deals.
Yeah,
so those are the only situations that you can win in.
Again, maybe I'm completely wrong and the Reds win, maybe they don't make the playoffs, but they win, 65, 70 games. Maybe they will. I don't see it happening. I see them winning maybe 55, 60 games at the most. I think it's going to be the Pirates versus the Reds to see who gets the lowest in the division. I really think that's going to be the competition this year. But again, I want to get your thought on here. We could spend hours talking about, free agents and trades and all that, which we will, guys, by the way. Once baseball season starts kicking up, March Madness is over, the draft is kind of over. We'll be focusing a lot on baseball because that's all that is going to be talked about. But I want to get your thought on the universal DH before we move on to the NFL. What are your thoughts on this? As a purist, for me, I have a very interesting take. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the universal DH. Well, let's just go back to when it was just American League with the DH. I thought it created an interesting dynamic in the World Series when a National League team would either get, I guess, an extra bat, or the American League would lose one of their bats and have to have their pitchers start hitting, because that also affects the way that you substitute. Like if a starter's, maybe you don't have your starter go one extra inning because it's his turn up at the plate, and you need a guy that's a little bit better at hitting to maybe come up with runners in scoring position and have a better chance to drive that run in. So I always, I guess, was fascinated by that dynamic. But on the other hand, when you look at, like, let's just say the NFL, we don't see like the AFC be like, oh, we play with 5 down linemen, and the NFC be like, well, we play with 7 down linemen. And when you're in our home stadium, you have to play this way, and, vice versa. Yeah. So I guess from that standpoint, it would make sense that everybody just play under the same rules. But I did always find that interesting when the American League had to adjust, or when the National League would adjust. I thought that was kind of fun to watch. But I understand the argument to it. Nobody really wants to watch pitchers bat, although there were a small amount that were fun to watch hit, like Madison Bumgarner, Bartolo Colon, DC Sabathia, Dontrelle Willis,
Bronson Arroyo,
guys like that.
My guy.
Yeah, we see guys like that hit bombs, and it's fun, but they are also more of the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, and I also mentioned the Reds. Speaking of pitchers that can hit, Michael Lorenzen, my dude, his story is amazing. His Christian faith's amazing. He's not on the Reds anymore, which just hurts, but that's besides the point. This is my take. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. It makes it more even, but it's just, I think all these sports are changing so much, and sometimes you have to. I get that. But this is one thing that, like, does it affect it a lot? Maybe. Because let's be honest, we've seen DHs for the AL that are crap. They're terrible. They hit like 220, and they hit maybe 5 home runs this season. So,
which is very, I guess, not the point of the DH. If your literal job is to hit the ball, you better be freaking good at it.
Yes. And also, as a former pitcher, listen, I loved when coach said, hey, you're going to get to hit today. That is the best feeling in the world, because you can actually do something other than just throw the baseball. So I still wish they would have just like waited and maybe tested it in the playoffs this year. Did they do it last year in the playoffs?
During the COVID year, they did universal DH, but I don't know about last year.
But I think like with a normal year, maybe test it for like, the end of, maybe during that September when you have all the call-ups or whatever, tested that. I don't know. I wish they would do more testing, because like, to me, like, what do the fans want? Like, did they ever get the opinion of the fans? Because again, it is for the fans. And that's why I believe baseball has always been. And I just think it's something like, how much are we going to change this game? We're getting rid of the shift, which I think is stupid.
I hate that change. Yeah. I hate that more than this universal.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that I think we could argue about, whatever. So yeah, that's baseball. Josh and I love baseball, so we could spend hours on baseball, literally hours on baseball.
One other move that I want to touch on, though, before we move on is Matt Chapman of the Blue Jays joining a lineup that already features Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. Like, are the Blue Jays now going to be able to compete with the Yankees, which have a bomb squad of their own with Aaron Judge,
Hey,
like John
don't say that long.
and Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo?
They don't say that loud, man. You know, a lot of those Yankee fans get so offended when you say that their team's worse than like any other team. So you know how that works. No, I mean, they could be. I mean, they could be. Vlad Jr. is one of my favorite young players to watch. I just love the way he plays. And he reminds me of his dad. I remember watching Vlad Sr. hit a ball off the ground and just don't care. You know,
Vlad Jr. also lost 20 pounds in the offseason.
Did he
so
really?
He's not as heavy, yeah.
Man, I like the chunky
Maybe
Vlad
that'll
Jr.
allow him to be a little bit more athletic in the field, but
yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. So, Josh, that's baseball. We love baseball, but we're going to talk about football because a lot of free agency has been going on. That's already screwed up our mock drafts. I'm sorry for everyone that pays attention to our mock drafts because they are just crap now. To pretty much, we could just flush them down the toilet. Aaron and I talked about last week off the air how both
we
of
are
our
in a
mock drafts are terrible.
situation now where Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett both could be top 10 picks.
Absolutely. So, Josh, why don't you go ahead and talk about some of these moves? What's been happening on the NFL that's really caught our eye?
Well, for starters, Aaron Rodgers staying with the Packers. I think we might have touched on that already.
Yeah, we did a little bit. Yeah.
So that's kind of like where it started. Russell Wilson, we also touched on now from the Seahawks to the Broncos. Tom Brady back with the Bucks. It only took a couple weeks for the man to decide that, you know,
Dude,
what?
It's
I
Cristiano
hate
Ronaldo.
being a dad. I hate being a husband. I want to play football. I'm sure that's not the thought process that Tom had, but I've seen a lot of memes about that, and I just laugh when I read those. But Tom is back in Tampa, so that changes, I guess, their main needs for offense and makes them, I guess, more of a real contender. So that's one move.
Even though if you look at Cristiano Ronaldo had the big play in it. Remember, there was that game, and he asked, like, hey, are you done? And Tom Brady kind of went, didn't really say anything. Yeah. So I think Cristiano Ronaldo, he's like, man, look at this dude. He's 37 running the whole soccer pitch. This doesn't make sense. Why am I not out there at 44 throwing a football? So interesting. Yes. So that's one of my favorite moves. What are some of the other moves?
Oh man, Davante Adams to the Raiders,
which we will touch on because that is going to change. Aaron Rodgers must be mad. He's got to be mad.
Matt Ryan to the Colts. And Marcus Mariota to the Falcons to fill in. So are the Falcons in full tank mode now that Ridley's gone and Ryan's
He's not gone. He's not gone. He is just on leave.
Gone for the season. We'll go with that. And then the biggest one involves our Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson officially rejecting a trade to Cleveland. They're out of the running. And then all of a sudden, the next day,
This is what he did. He went and goes, Saints. Ooh, bad roster. Let's look at the Falcons. Never mind. Let's look at the Panthers. Probably not the best idea. Let's look at the Browns. Ooh, that's actually not that bad.
They just need to throw in more guaranteed money.
Exactly. So there's a lot of moves. I think what the crazy thing is, I'm going to go to the Packers one real quick. When Aaron Rodgers signs, what do you tell him? Like, hey, we'll keep Davante Adams for you. You have to. Like, there's no way he comes back going, hey, we're going to draft you a wide receiver. And Rodgers is going, yeah, you've tried to do that on me before, and that just never happens.
This was also, like, I think the inevitable move. Like, if you pay Rodgers all that money, like, you're not going to be able to keep Davante Adams, especially when we see guys like Christian Kirk and Mike Williams making $20 million. Like, those guys aren't even, like, top 20 receivers.
Supposedly,
so you know that Davante is going to see that and be like, I demand more money. And they can't afford that after they're giving Rodgers $50 million a year.
I don't know where I read this, and I can't remember if it's factual. I'm pretty sure it is. I think I read it on ESPN or NFL Network, but something about like that the Packers actually offered more money than the Raiders, but there was something with there was some weird thing going on there. But I think could have been the Carr situation because he played with Derek Carr in college. There's that whole thing.
Teammates. Yes.
Does that make a factor as well? So this, by the way, I think makes the Raiders by the way, the AFC West is like one of the scariest divisions.
The Raiders added Chandler Jones. They extended Max Crosby. They brought in Davante Adams. This team, I mean, that whole division, Ben, that whole NFC
terrifying.
West with the Chiefs and Broncos. And
you could have.
Like, who's even the best roster? Who's the worst roster out of those four? I don't even think I could rank them right now.
I'll be honest. There easily could be all over 500 teams in that division. I would not be shocked.
Is that even possible when you play 6 divisional games?
It could
everybody
be.
above
I mean,
500.
if you beat the other teams, I'm sure it could be possibly.
I mean, we have seen like I think three. I mean, we've seen three teams from the same division make the playoffs. I think we've seen a last place team be like 7-9. So
Yeah.
maybe one other game swings, and then they all could be 500. But that's
it.
quite the division.
But then I will say, I think one of the most interesting moves of the offseason so far is the way the Bengals. Yes, I'm talking about the Bengals. Jared, you're welcome. Okay, this is the only time I'll ever talk about the Bengals positively. Okay, the way the Bengals go out and they like, oh yeah, Burrow got destroyed in the playoffs. We're gonna go get an offense line. They got Lael Collins. They got who else they get? They got someone from Tampa Bay. Is it Campa? I can't remember his name. Guy from Tampa Bay, and they got another. So they got 3 offensive linemen.
They might not even need to draft one now, to be honest.
Exactly. So they got 3 offensive linemen. He said, I guess Collins said, hey, I'm your bodyguard now or something like that. And I'm just thinking, yeah, Garrett's going to have something to say about that. But yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah. Believe that while you can. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting moves. And would you say, not including Deshaun Watson, we'll put that on a separate spectrum here in a second. Out of all these moves, what is the one for you that says this has put this team when they were kind of here, they're here, or if they were really low, they've kind of moved up into that mid tier? Is there any move that's really stuck out to you so far?
Gonna go ahead with the Davante Adams one because I think before that the Raiders were the clear last place team in that division, but now that they added him, the offense is like just as scary as all these other ones.
Yeah,
that's got to be the main one that I think when I mean, there's been a lot of moves that kind of shows you what teams are thinking.
Yeah.
Or what they're going to try to do. Like, I think the Falcons are definitely in tank mode right now. What they want to do next year, like, are they tanking for the number 1 pick to pull off a Bryce Young, CJ Stroud? Will they go ahead and use that 8th pick on like one of these rookie quarterbacks? It's really tough to say. But I think the Davante Adams one is the one that kind of really took the Raiders to that next level and is going to make that division a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think the one for me that really kind of I think puts them in a different level is the Bears trade that said Khalil Mack to the Chargers or the Rams.
That's true too.
No, Chargers. Yes,
Chargers. The Chargers.
Yeah, and to me, I think that puts the Chargers. I would not be shocked, and I'm going to put this out. This is a bold statement coming from Ben. All right, that we're at March 22nd. 2022. This is a bold statement. I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers finished first in that division. I would not be shocked. That defense is terrifying.
Like I was
Khalil
saying,
Mack, Joey Bosa,
anybody
crazy.
could win that one. And then in more like underrated moves, the Titans I think already had the division secured, but they went out and got Robert Woods. I think on a small deal. They got Austin Hooper from the Browns, who wasn't really being used. So I'm not so mad about that one that he's out of
even though he talked a little bit bad about the Browns, but that's the point.
We were giving him way too much money for the role he was playing, but I mean, still a talented tight end that is now.
They got rid of Julio. They did. That's going to be an interesting one to see where he goes. It kind of looks like he might be on his last legs. Just can't stay healthy, unfortunately. Maybe I did read this scenario. And this was before the Mariota trade, so maybe it won't happen now. But Cam Newton and Julio going over to Atlanta just to kind of like finish out their careers. I think there's like some friendship there, and Cam could just kind of like, I guess, end his career on a higher note, start for one more season, while Julio kind of, I guess, farewells with one more season with Atlanta. I don't know. But they got Mariota now. They don't really seem to be interested in trying to contend anymore, so I think one underlying move that I think is an interesting move that I think could very well work out is actually I think Carson Wentz going to the Washington Commanders. I think this is a guy who's been counted out, and I think whether this is a play to just get him through this next year, I still believe in Carson Wentz. I have said this for a few years. Like, if he stays healthy, he's a very good quarterback. We've shown that when he was in Philly. I think he showed it glimpses last year. But I like that move. And then another move that is very interesting to me that I kind of was like, I didn't know about was, I guess the Browns move to get Amari Cooper. It's like one of those that like I think is really great, but it's like do we have somebody else to go with him? That's the only reason I'm kind of holding that in the wide receiver realm, is like, who's going to be that second guy, that sort of thing.
They're talking about maybe Will Fuller, just because the connection with Deshaun. They're talking about bringing back Jarvis Landry on a cheaper deal if he can't.
Which I think Jarvis wouldn't mind that. I think Jarvis without Baker maybe feels more comfortable with Deshaun, but we'll get to that in a second. And then before we go to the Browns, what are two moves that were like that a move that was like, that's stupid? Why are you doing that? I have one that's very, very on my head.
A move that's stupid.
I know that sounds terrible, but like, it is just stupid.
There's I'm going to go ahead with Mitch Trubisky to the Steelers.
I would have to. Yeah. To be honest, I was shocked a little bit.
Expecting to get someone like Deshaun or somebody maybe like Wentz. I don't know. Just the guy that they settled on was Mitch Trubisky. So I don't think Pittsburgh fans are going to be too excited about that.
Yeah, I was going to go with that one as one of them. I think also, like, they were talking about the Deshaun Watson. We all know sometimes the Steelers are hesitant because of the Big Ben thing to kind of there's a lot of things with that too, I think. But I would say one that was really confused about was the Colts going after Matt Ryan. I'm just not. Why can't they just find a quarterback that they sit on for more than 1 year? They're just doing this whole 1 year cycle thing. Since Luck's retired, they've done this 1 year. The Brissett, who's by the way with the Browns now, Brissett with the Browns now, which is a good one. So Brissett, then they had Rivers, then they had Wentz, then they have now Matt Ryan. Now I think
the one positive thing that I would say about Ryan is that he's definitely on another level from like Brissett and from Rivers at the stage of his career he was in, and then even Wentz. I think it is a better one, but it still is only a short-term fix. Like, in hindsight, now that the Browns have Deshaun Watson, I thought a younger guy like Baker Mayfield behind another very good offensive line in Indy was more of a longer-term fix. So I don't know how much longer the Colts are going to keep playing like.
And they didn't. And the thing is, they didn't really do any other moves.
Unsustainable. It makes it very tough for any kind of consistency in an offense.
Yeah, and like I heard,
I don't hate the talent, Matt Ryan. I just hate like the amount of time that he might be able to hang out in Indy.
But I also heard a lot of people were like frustrated with Indianapolis because they did like no other moves. Like they just kind of like stood saddle, kind of like, and just was like, no, nothing, whatever. But also with the Falcons, the whole rebuild thing, I understand that. But the thing that confuses me is that they've took on so much dead cap. They've took on like 40 million in dead cap or something like that, which to me is just like, that goes back to just poor management and poor like thought process behind it all, which is very interesting to me. But now the moment you all been waiting for, you have two Browns fans on a podcast. You all thought we were just going to skip over the fact that we have opinions about what's going on with the Browns. No, we're going to cover it here. So let's go over the Browns moves real quick. So they got rid of Jarvis Landry. They released him, tried to trade him. That just shows me there's not much really wantingness, I think, for Jarvis. They've said the Dolphins, maybe that's a reunion. Who knows? We got rid of Hooper as well. Hooper's gone.
Shredder, center.
Yep. Which, by the way, I'll talk on that one in a second. That one.
We didn't make an attempt to re-sign Clowney.
Yes.
So we're just freeing up all this cap space, and it seems like we're about to make a big-time player.
And they reworked Amari Cooper. So they saved like 15 to 20 million with reworking his deal, which they just signed. So it's kind of funny, that whole thing. But then the big one, Baker Mayfield, they originally went after Deshaun Watson. I'll give you a little timeline. They went after Deshaun Watson. He said no. Baker didn't really like that, felt a little offended. What's new? Baker's always offended, it feels like, at something in this world. I love Baker, and we both have this weird relationship with Baker in the sense that we know what he's like when he's really good and when he's healthy. We also know kind of his attitude, the way it can be. According to reports in the locker room, he could be a little bit misinterpreted / he was not always the most understanding guy in the world. There's a lot of other stories that are out there. Whether they're true or not, who knows? But Baker then demanded for a trade, and then within hours, or I think a day, Deshaun Watson says, "Hey, I'm coming to Cleveland." And I went, "Sweet, what's the deal?" Oh boy, 230 million guaranteed. And how do we give up?
Fully guaranteed.
And this is the thing. I thought, what are we giving up? A first round, maybe a couple seconds. Maybe we'll throw in Baker. Maybe it's like a swap deal type thing. No. What do we give up? 3 first rounders. Oh, and by the way, let's throw in a third rounder on top of that. What do we get back? Just a third round. I think it was third. It was a fifth round. Was it the fifth round? I don't even remember. But to me, I will just say this. I want to hear your thoughts here. I will just say, one, I got to give the guts and the balls that Andrew Berry has to go and the Haslams to say, we're going to bet our whole lottery on the fact that this guy comes in and is a stud star. Because if he flunks, you all know that the Cleveland fan base is about to rip in to this organization like none other. So, Josh, you have the floor. Please give me your thoughts on all these different moves, but especially Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I mean, this has to be the biggest trade in Cleveland Browns history, right? In terms of what we gave up.
Has to be.
Like we've gone out to get guys like, I guess, Odell Beckham, higher profile guys, but I think we only had to give up a first.
Yeah.
And maybe a third to get him, something like that. And Jabril Peppers was involved in some other players like that. But this is hands down the largest trade in Cleveland Browns history, I think, in terms of what we gave up. So that's number one. Number two, let me walk you through my emotions. So the emotion roller coaster.
You're on vacation, by the way, too.
Whole situation. Yes. And a little bit before vacation, like, you hear about all those things that were happening where we were just like cutting guys and we ended up bringing in Cooper and restructuring. And so it seemed like we were about to make a big play on a player.
And Winovich.
Yeah, for sure. And go out and get Winovich for Mac Wilson. So it's just like, okay, what large move are we in play for? And I'm hearing Deshaun and I'm like, nah, it won't be Deshaun because we have Baker Mayfield in the building. And then next thing you know, we are one of the finalists to get Deshaun. And then we are the first team out of the running for Deshaun. And then Baker drops that message on Instagram that seemed like premature and unnecessary and kind of just, I guess, frustrated me more than anything because it's like, yeah, we get it, Baker. You love Cleveland. That's what I've always felt. Been a big part of bringing Cleveland into stardom, into more of a winning culture and changing it. I feel like him, Jarvis Landry, and Myles Garrett have been very instrumental in this culture change. So it also reminded me of when Jay Cutler was initially in Denver and they made a move or tried to make a move to bring a big time quarterback in and failed, whose name escapes me. I can't remember, but obviously that comes out. Cutler hears about it and he's like, well, why would I want to play for a team that doesn't believe in me? So Mayfield not wanting to be a Brown and requesting a trade made total sense to me. And I'm like, wow. So we just laid it all on the line, made all these moves to try to get Deshaun.
I thought the same thing.
And he turned us away. And now in the process, we anger Mayfield. Now he's gone. And now we don't have any quarterback whatsoever. We just screwed up royally, big time. But then the next day, all of a sudden, I don't know if we just offered Watson more guaranteed money to sweeten the deal, but then he's a Brown. And then I look at what the trade that we gave up. Like this, I don't even think 3 first rounds was what the Texans were demanding.
No, they originally wanted
before any of this happened.
They originally wanted, I think, it was 2.
Trade.
It was 2 first rounders, I believe, and a second rounder was like what they were saying. Like we want 2 first rounders and a second rounder, and that's all we need. And I think this is part of Watson's deal. Like, hey, there's got to be like offer me more money. And the Texans was like, okay, if you're offering him more money, like you need to sweeten the pot here a little bit. We got other teams that we're willing to go to too. I think there's a lot of combination of both.
Like, yeah. So even before like Watson had like all these assault accusations and stuff like that, when he initially just requested the trade, Houston was looking for those 2 first rounders, I think, and then maybe some extra ones. So this is like shocked me how much we had to get rid of. Not to mention the $230 million that handicaps our payroll and doesn't really allow us to go out and get any more guys. We trade away our future with all these first rounders, so we can't build up if this fails. Watson inevitably is going to get suspended. That's just something that we see the NFL like to do. They suspended Zeke a little while back for 4 games for no reason. They've suspended Tom Brady for apparently, for Deflategate, but there wasn't any kind of guilty verdict in that, if I remember correctly. So just because of like the press, I think Watson's going to get suspended. And then we're going to have to shell out that $46 million a year on average, I believe is what it comes out to Watson, because it's fully guaranteed. So that means that we're going to be running on Jacoby Brissett, at least for maybe the first half of the season, maybe the full
I mean, he's not, and the thing is, we don't want to give slight to Jacoby Brissett. He's been there, he's done it, but he's not
a starter. Definitely one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league, but you also don't want to be counting on him to lead your team to the playoffs either.
Yeah.
But as a guy that's filling in for maybe 2 games while your starter's injured and you can rely on a Nick Chubb's style running game, like cool. But for longer than that, I don't really feel good about it. So, and then the other thing that I know some people have had an issue with is like the accusations to begin with. There's some people that think like, well, just because he got off, it doesn't mean that he's totally innocent, because in cases like this, it's just he said, she said. Like it's very tough to find hard evidence for things like this. So could he be guilty? maybe. But if you're going to have a problem with Deshaun having these
Kareem Hunt,
you got to have a problem with the Browns bringing Kareem Hunt too. So in terms of that, I don't have any problem with. But it is kind of interesting to see people being mad about Deshaun, but not about Kareem, and also about trashing Ben Roethlisberger for the last decade, only to now, I guess, welcome Deshaun. So it is kind of a little different there. But my issue with the Deshaun trade more so is because I don't think this really makes the Browns much better, given all that we had to give up, what it does to our payroll. And plus, I don't think I really love Baker Mayfield. I think the true Baker Mayfield is rookie year Baker Mayfield throwing the rookie touchdown record, leading the Browns to the playoffs. When we've seen him at his worst is when Freddie Kitchens has been the head coach and when he's been injured. I don't think that's a true Baker Mayfield. Baker at his best, I don't think Deshaun is that much better than. Plus, Deshaun has only one playoff win. Why are we giving him all this money? He's blown a 28-0 lead, I believe it was, to the Chiefs in the playoffs. His stats are very empty. But we have seen him do well when he's had talent around him. The Browns have talent around. So to me, overall, this move I'm just more mad about because I don't think we got that much better in the end, and we had to give up so much to make it happen. That's my full, I guess, analysis, opinion, take on it.
Yeah, and I've been in so many roller coaster emotions. Like I had friends at work. I had friends at work who are Ravens fans. So I talked about this to you before. I have two coworkers at work that are huge Ravens fans. And as soon as it happened, I'm like on my computer. We're on spring break. I'm enjoying my time, and I get these text messages and they're like, "Oh, there goes your whole future. There goes this." And at first that's what I thought, right? Like there's 3 first rounders, and again, what are we going to get for Baker? Now we have to trade Baker. That's now on the docket. And this is what I say. Again, I want to give props to Baker. Baker brought this city from basically nothing to he really helped the city have a passion. He reminds you of the city of Cleveland. He's a very underdog, hardworking guy.
Underdog, blue collar,
leader. And he has his issues like we all do, right? Like he sometimes can be too cocky, sometimes can be too stubborn. And I think sometimes
too much what people are saying about him.
And sometimes he focuses on, I need to feed the stardom, when it's like, no, just be you. Be the quarterback from rookie year that was so new at this that you were just trying to trust everyone around you. And I'll say this. I thought when they brought in Mari Cooper, I'm like, great, awesome. We have our number 1 receiver. If they can somehow keep Landry, I don't think it's going to happen, but if somehow they could get him back on a short deal, that's sweet. You have 2 guys you can rely on, and you have Baker. There's been a lot of people that said we need to get rid of Baker. And I'm like, Josh and I, if you guys have watched this, you guys know Josh and I are on the same page when it senses he's been injured. We can't really judge him. I will say this. I think talent-wise, just Deshaun Watson, yeah, he might bring more of the running aspect. Yeah, he might have, if you look at his numbers overall, somewhat look more pleasing. They're kind of similar. They're not really too different. I'll just say this. I'm going to trust Andrew Berry, because I have trusted Andrew Berry with these last few drafts, with some of these signings he's done. And I got to trust the Haslams. If they think they're knowing to do it, if they're willing to give up $250 million on a quarterback, then okay, I'm going to trust them. Now, if they screw it up, my trust is going to be gone.
If this ends up being a colossal failure, like Berry definitely fired. Like there's no way around.
But this is what I'm saying though, Josh, is that Berry has proven to us as Browns fans that he can build within the draft. He can find smart free agent signings. We've seen him do it with Clowney. We've seen him do it with a couple other guys. Yes, this is a lot of money, and honestly, it scares the bejeebers out of me that he gave up 3 first rounders for this. Now, can we get some of those back maybe in the future with a trade or two? Maybe that will happen. I don't know. But I do know is that it almost feels like, I know the Patriots never did this, but if we can become the Patriots and build from like the 2nd round to the 5th round, then maybe I'll be more comfortable, right? But if you look at some of our best players, Nick Chubb, 2nd round. So again, I know where you're at, and I'm at the same boat at times. But again, I got to trust the people that we've trusted, and we got to trust in the coaching staff. Again, will Deshaun be suspended? I agree with you. I don't think he should be, because he hasn't been proven guilty of anything. Will they suspend him? Probably for at least 4 games, I'm guessing, at least. And you're going to have Brissett in there. But again, you still have Chubb, still have Hunt. I will say the weirdest move that the Browns did more than the Deshaun Watson is getting rid of J.C. Tretter. I think that was a very stupid move. That is just my personal opinion.
One of the best centers in the league.
And I don't know if he's been signed yet. I don't know if they're going to try to rework something to maybe like a 2-year deal worth like $8 million, pay him, try to see if he'll convince him. You have two of the best guards, if not the best guards in football. You have a young tackle in Willis, who's still learning, he's still growing. You have Conklin, who's been inconsistent, but now you're looking at like, oh, you could have used that first round then on getting, Lindenbaum or getting a guy that now you could do, but now you don't have that. So again, that's where I go.
The dream for Garrett Wilson is now gone. The dream
Dude, stop it. It hurts, okay? Freaking hurts.
Yeah. I do want to clarify too, Ben, that even though I disapprove of this move overall, obviously as a Browns fan, I'm not rooting for them to go like 4-12 as a result. Mm-hmm. I want it to work out. I just, from the outside looking in, don't think it's going to.
Yeah, I would say this. Give me this. If you had a percentage right now, what would your percentage be of confidence in this being, and let's say in 3 years, what is your percentage that the Browns are in the playoffs consistently for at least 2 years? What is your percentage belief out of 100%? If you have the team right now with Deshaun Watson, not obviously after this year, so let's say in the next 3 years, do they make it more than one season, or do they even make the playoffs? What's your percentage thought on?
I think we make it at least once in these next 2 years, but I would have thought the same thing before we made this trade too. Yeah. I thought the talent has always been there to make the playoffs, even last year, before we royally screwed it up. But with Deshaun, I mean, the team is still playoff caliber. I just don't like what it does to our ability to build in the future. And I don't think that Watson is that much more of an upgrade that he deserved all this guaranteed money.
Yeah, and I think
it's like when Kyler a little while ago was demanding the massive extension that he was. And it's like, bro, you haven't even won a playoff game yet. You haven't even, done X, Y, Z in terms of statistical contributions. And Deshaun, I mean, to his credit, has one playoff win, but in terms of the career accomplishments and like doing anything like worth, noting, like Deshaun Watson could retire today and we're not going to really remember him in terms of the huge football landscape.
And that's why I love the Tom Brady. I hate to say I love Tom Brady. That just sounded hurt right there. But the way he's never went for a big extension. You look at Tom Brady's career. He's never really went for Aaron Rodgers. Like Aaron Rodgers is buckled his team.
Patrick Mahomes, Kyler.
They have buckled their teams. But I will give this. If I look at Deshaun Watson, I'm going, you're not Mahomes, you're not Aaron Rodgers, you're not Tom Brady.
Right. You're not on that level.
Yeah. So again, I would love, and I think Josh, you agree with me, I would love for all of you to watch this 2 years from now and prove us wrong. And the Browns have won two Super Bowls.
Holding up the Super Bowl trophy, I don't
care.
Totally admit that I was totally wrong.
Yes.
Never give another opinion on football again.
We are Browns fans. So for us, we look at the bleak because we've been there. We've been at that moment and we don't want to go back there because it's so terrible to feel that. And I will say, I think part of the reason why they made this move, and I think part of the reason why when they saw, the Bengals are getting better, the Steelers, they're always going to be around, the Ravens are going to be healthy. I almost wonder if Barry was like, okay, do we need to change something? I just don't know. I wish I could ask Barry right now on the podcast, be like, hey, what was your thought process in this? Really want to know.
That might be something that we'll have to do in the future is get him on.
Yeah, we're going to definitely work on that. We're going to get him
We'll shoot his secretary an email and see if we can work it out.
Hey, you never know, right? I met one of my basketball icons this past weekend, so you never know what's going to happen in your life. You never do. But yeah, so the Browns, I will say another move before we move on is I hope they get Jadeveon Clowney. I think there's a possibility. I really do. I think there's a possibility that Jadeveon Clowney might squeak back in. I think they have to get him longer than a year though. Like I'm tired of these 1-year contracts. Like it's just going to hinder the Browns just like this big deal could in the future because they have so much cap space instead of 2 years where you can kind of spread it out and that sort of thing.
If we end up losing him, I believe Malik McDowell also isn't going to be brought back because he just got arrested. And that was something he was trying to fight was from that, I guess the crime and stuff like that. But he's back to, at least from the outside looking in, looks like that's not going to work out. So defensive line is going to have some holes if we can't.
And you thought, oh, well, they could get Jordan Davis or, they could get, but nope, can't do that now. Can't do that. We got a 2nd round pick, but can't do that. So it'll be interesting to see what after all these moves in the NFL, it'll be interesting to see.
That is kind of in the range of Haskell Garrett though.
Yes, that is true.
It wouldn't be a reach to take him in that range.
And I like Haskell Garrett, not because I'm a Buckeye fan, like just in general, if you watch Haskell Garrett, By the way, that man got shot in the mouth. So I don't care what anybody says. The
Is he
man's
even
tough.
alive?
The
You
dude's
should be
tough.
alive if you survive like taking a gunshot to the face like that.
Yeah. So, guys, crazy. I would say this. I think if we look at all these moves, obviously our next mock draft, which will be coming out after some of the pro days, just because we're waiting, because every time we make one, there's freaking 4 moves that happen. Then it's just all
And
screwed.
then it's like, well, these moves aren't going to happen now.
Yeah. So once we get, we'll be able to redo one, which I think will be interesting to see both of our takes. Cause I think there's some people that I've watched, like Ajabu. If you guys heard, he tore his Achilles.
Now. Yeah,
he tore his Achilles, which we all know that never ends well. So there's a lot of people that actually I might have dropping out of the first round because I realized looking back that, wow, that was a stupid decision, Ben. But Josh, as we finish up this week's episode, wow, Josh, we did that in like just over an hour, which is just impressive to me.
That is impressive.
We were joking. So if everyone's watching you, like, why do you care about saying that? Because we were joking before, like, how are we going to get all this craziness happening? And obviously we could go into more depth, and most likely some of this will be talked about for weeks ahead. So again, if there's certain topics you want to talk about, like, please, like, let us know. Baseball, I know hockey is happening as well. So that trade deadline's happening. It's just all crazy. All right. Maybe we'll get my brother on because he's the hockey nerd of my family. Yeah. So anyways, Josh, as we look into, these next few weeks of craziness, of March Madness, of the NFL draft coming up, of baseball happening, what is the one thing you're looking forward to in this spring/summer that you're like, man, I can't wait for this to happen? What is that one event that's really gonna catch your eye?
One event in particular, maybe just baseball games being back.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
I haven't been to a Cleveland game in a while.
Are you going to go this year? Are you going to give us a little maybe like a reporting from after the game for us on the next maybe, if you go one time this summer?
Yeah, I don't know. It's Cleveland is a little further out, so maybe
Cincinnati,
an easier move. Cincinnati is a little closer. Detroit's a little closer. Those are teams that Cleveland does travel to. Maybe those would be better opportunities for me to watch them. But it's been a while since I have gotten to catch a game out at the Jake, or Progressive Field, as it's technically called right now, I believe. So that is something that I'm looking forward to, is hopefully getting some Cleveland baseball back.
I would say I hate golf, but seeing the Masters is always just a great time in the spring. No Mickelson this year, which there's a whole situation with that. But so I would say that, but I also agree with you with baseball. But one thing I'm looking forward to, probably one of the coolest things is, and it's actually happening probably when people are listening to this, maybe, is World Cup qualifying for the World Cup in soccer for next Christmas time, which is weird. It's never happened, I don't remember, in the winter, but it's happening during December next year. So the qualifying, the U.S. has to win at least, I think, 2 of their last 3 games to make it. Please make it this year, guys. I don't want to hear over here in Europe. I don't want to hear it. Okay. I hear it already that we suck at soccer. I don't need to hear it more. So, but that's what I'm looking forward to. It's going to be a great time. Josh, I hope you had a great episode. I had a great episode. This was fun. It was a lot of stuff. It's always fun. Yeah, it would be. It's good to be back. It's good to have you back. But yeah, if you've loved this episode of the podcast, go ahead. If you're watching it, hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, because we have a lot of different podcast episodes that come out. Josh and I have, obviously, every week. Occasionally we have an extra one with Aaron that came on randomly. And then also there's other videos on there, like videos with my wife. She did bracketology. She's better than me, as she said earlier in the podcast episode. So there's that. And then also, if you love this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead and, just favorite it up, or whatever you call it. I don't really know anymore. But anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Get outside. It's nice out. It's spring. Get some fresh air. Go out and hang out with friends, and catch some baseball here coming up soon, and catch all the sports that you can with your family and friends. So until next time, we'll see ya.